Joining me now is author and broadcaster Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Now, we've got Israeli tanks reportedly reaching Gaza City's largest hospital, Shifa, where around 650 patients are trapped amid gunfire exchanges between Hamas and the Israeli army. The IDF says the Palestinian terror group is using the hospital as a cover for its command post in underground tunnels, elevating it as a top target in Israel's efforts to eradicate Hamas. It comes as Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong has called for a ceasefire and also called on Israel to stop attacking hospitals. She said, "We do call on Israel to cease the attacking of hospitals." She added she understood that Hamas is burrowed into civilian infrastructure. But she went on to say, I think the international community, looking at what is occurring at hospitals, would say to Israel, these are protected facilities, protected under international law. Rabbi, what is your response to Australia's Foreign Minister, Penny Wong?
If they're protected under international law, then why didn't Australia, since there's been 4 wars already between Hamas and Israel, why didn't Australia object to Hamas violating that international law by making the Shifa hospital into a military base? Let's just think about this. The Shifa hospital essentially has a thin veneer of incubators and a thin veneer of ICU units, but 90% of it is underground. It is a military base designed to protect terrorists so they can murder Jews, kill Jews, annihilate Israel, exterminate Jews, and perpetrate a second Holocaust. The fact that the world has allowed Hamas to do this for 15 years as they have brutalized the Palestinians, as they have established a dictatorship, the fact that Western alliances are only waking up after 1,400 Jews are murdered and telling Israel, even then, you can't defend your people, is shocking 75 years after the Holocaust. Rita, you and I spoke a few days ago. 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the beginning of the Holocaust. What is the world's problem about Jews just living safely and securely? What is it about Australia that you have an issue with us protecting ourselves? Australia has a massive Jewish community. Well, I mean, 100,000 is pretty big for our small numbers, most of whom are Holocaust survivors. So stop the immoral pronouncements to Israel that they should allow a Hamas command and control center, a terrorist base under a hospital to go untouched.
Now, Rabbi, I want to play you a video of a mother whose daughters watched their father be murdered by Hamas and were then kidnapped and taken into Gaza. Their names are Daphna, who's 15, and Ella, who's 8. And here their mother begs to take their place.
אני קוראת לנשיא ארצות הברית ג'ו ביידן ולראש ממשלת ישראל בנימין נתניהו, אם אתם לא מצליחים להחזיר את הבנות שלי עכשיו, אני מבקשת מכם, אני מתחננת בפניכם, קחו אותי אליהם עכשיו, תכניסו אותי לעזה, אני אהיה החטופה ה-243. רק שאוכל להחזיק אותם ולהגיד להם.
Rabbi, it's heartbreaking, but this is a plight hundreds of families are going through, and the focus on the hostages seems to have been entirely lost. I know there's the posters that are going up and people are tearing them down, but beyond that, we're not really hearing much about these people who we don't know what they're suffering. We don't even know if they're still alive, where they are, and what they're enduring.
We knew, unfortunately, Rita, that aside from broadcasters like yourself, we Jews knew that after the worst act of violence and murder against Jews since the Holocaust, we knew that the world would focus on it for about a week or two, if that. Jewish life has been cheap for 2,000 years. None of us will ever get fully to the demonic forces that drive anti-Semitism. But Jewish life is so cheap. All of the suffering of my Palestinian brothers and sisters, the Al-Shifa hospital, which, by the way, was the terrorists, Hamas terrorists, used the entrance of the hospital to fire RPGs at Israeli tanks today, thereby proving, because they were embedded Western journalists, thereby proving that it really is a military base. But we knew that it would quickly be forgotten and that the Jews would be blamed for the suffering. We don't want our Palestinian brothers and sisters suffering. This was caused by an invasion of Hamas who took these 250 hostages, little babies whose diapers have to be changed, babies who have to be given bottles. Did you see the look of the mother? It wasn't even her words, which was so painful. It was the look of her face. You could see she hasn't slept in weeks. You could see the torment, the torture she's going through. And you know why her children were captured? You know why they were taken hostage? For one reason. They never harmed anyone. Israel never bothered Hamas in Gaza. They withdrew in 2005. It's because they're Jews. It's because they're Jews. It's because they're Jews. Hamas is a genocidal organization whose charter says that they will kill every Jew hiding behind every tree, every place in the world. By the way, that even includes the grandchildren of President Joe Biden, all of whose 3 children marry Jews. He has a brand new Jewish grandson born to his South African daughter-in-law, Batya Melissa Cohen Biden. So we are all at risk. And let's just remember that today it's Israel and tomorrow it's the West. Look at all of these peaceful pro-Palestinian marches that we've seen in London, that we've seen in Melbourne. Peaceful, of course, I'm saying very ironic. All of the protesters, their whole idea is intimidation. They cover their faces. They try to look scary. They burn things. They fight with the police. They break things. Find me one Jewish protest where that is done. Find me, if you see Islamists walking down the street in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane with their faces covered, do you say to yourself, you know, maybe I should cross the street? And now you see 4 or 5 Jewish people walking down the street, even holding an Israeli flag. Do you say to yourself, you know, maybe these Jews are coming. They're pretty damn scary. I'm going to cross the street. We Jews believe in peace. We have one tiny little state that is surrounded by 600 million of our Arab brothers and sisters. I could cover Israel with my finger on a map, and the rest of the Arab countries would be this large. What is it about Hamas and the Arab nations that this tiny little country bothers them? And I have to tell you, that's not the real question for people watching. The real question is, what is it about Western society, Western countries like Australia, that you can't get behind the good and evil of Hamas, taking hostages, having sex with dead women's bodies, which is the most demented, sick thing I've ever heard in my life, by the way, which the terrorists confessed to, burning whole families alive, launching this invasion. And then you blame Israel for defending itself. And then the story reverts not from the 250 hostages, not from the 1,200 murdered Israelis, but to the way that Palestinians are suffering, which they are because of Hamas, and the Jews are always blamed. We are a new generation of Jews, Rita. We don't stand for this anymore. We are not the generation of the Holocaust. We didn't have an army then. We didn't have a state then. We are proud, we are strong, and we are determined. We will not be defamed. We will not be liable. We'll fight back on the airwaves. We'll fight back in the sands of Gaza. We will fight back on social media. We will never surrender.
Well, last week you were in a very heated clash with Cenk Uygur on Piers Morgan's program over whether Israel's actions amounted to genocide against the Palestinians. The debate reached its peak when Cenk called you a bigot and a racist. Here's a bit of the exchange.
Where were you then? Why did you only come up now? In fact, when Bashar al-Assad killed 600,000 children, Arab children, when he gassed them with mustard gas, my organization took out full-page New York Times ads to protect them from sarin gas. Where were you then? You don't care about Arab children. You are a Jew hater, defined as someone who only wants to lie and say that the Jews are genocidaires. And don't try to cancel me and say that I shouldn't be on.
Rabbi, it got heated. Tell me a little bit about that debate. And you've been in plenty of these debates. Tell me about how you handle people who just scream bigot and racist at you.
Well, you know, I was the rabbi at Oxford University for 11 years. The first sign of someone losing debate is when they scream like a lunatic, which Cenk Uygur did, when they engage in ad hominem attacks, which Cenk Uygur did. But here, much worse, when they begin to level the most disgusting anti-Semitic tropes against Jews, which Cenk Uygur did, saying that we Jews are genocidaires, we just want to slaughter Palestinians, we enjoy it, we love showing machismo and bravado over the Palestinians in order to prove how powerful. I mean, we are the people of the book. We only have an army because we learned from the Holocaust that we have no choice. But since guys like Cenk, they love this kind of militaristic jingle. Let me just be clear. What Cenk Uygur just experienced in our debate was a digital decapitation. He came across as someone utterly ignorant. He kept on screaming, why don't you Jews, it's always you Jews, by the way, why don't you Jews give the Palestinians a state. And I told them, why don't we give them a state? I said, Cenk, do me a favor. Before you do a debate, just read a Wikipedia page. Palestinians were offered 1936, the Peel Commission, their own state, turned it down. 1947, UN partition plan, turned it down. 1967, after Israel conquered Judea, Samaria, and the West Bank, offered a state, turned it down. 2000, Yasser Arafat, Bill Clinton, Ehud Barak turned it down. 2008, Mahmoud Abbas and Ehud Olmert, 97% of Judea and Samaria and the Temple Mount turned it down. They have always turned it down because our Palestinian brothers and sisters, sadly, do not want a two-state solution, Rita. They want a final solution.
Rabbi, we've got students here in Victoria being urged to participate in a school walkout in support of Palestine. A group called Free Palestine Melbourne is behind this, and this School Students for Palestine walkout is being planned for November 23. It would be fair to say, Rabbi, that despite what Hamas inflicts on their own people and what they inflicted on the Israelis, they are winning the PR war when it comes to young people. You see this not just here in Australia, but in the UK, in the US, there seems to be a significant percentage of youngsters who are siding with the Palestinian cause and in many cases being useful idiots for Hamas.
Rita, students unfortunately experience what we call underdogma. They automatically, without any knowledge and out of sheer ignorance, decide who's the weaker party, who's the underdog, let's support the underdog. So they think that Israel has this vast military and the poor Palestinians, they have nothing to eat and they have no hospitals. Precisely the opposite is true. The Jews are 6 million, surrounded by 600 million Arabs, oil-rich Arabs. Not one of these Arab states has taken even one refugee evacuee from Gaza. You know, and you had just last week in Saudi Arabia, you had an Arab conference to discuss the plight of the Palestinians. Why don't any of these Melbourne students who are about to walk out, why didn't they ask a single Arab country to take in even one Palestinian baby as an evacuee? Just one, take in one. They won't take 10, they won't take 20. They don't want them because they're not interested in Palestinian lives. They're interested in condemning Israel. And it's very easy to prove. Do you know that one of the people who was invited to attend this conference to save the Palestinians in Riyadh was Bashar al-Assad, who killed 600,000 Arabs? I'm sorry to chuckle at that because it's so tragic. It would be comical if it were not tragic. Let me repeat this. At the conference to save Arab lives, they invited Bashar al-Assad, the greatest murderer of Arab lives in the modern world. He was there condemning Israel. That tells you everything you need to know.
Absolutely.
So if the kids in Melbourne really want to care, walk out on Syria, protest what's happening, what Hamas is doing to Arab children, protest what all the Arab countries are doing, brutalizing their people, no democracy, no freedom of press. There isn't one democracy in the Arab world. Australia, can you remember you're a democracy and kind of be on the side of the people who believe in freedom and stop this nonsense? Because Australia is humiliating itself before the world.
Rabbi Shmuley, thank you so much for your time today.